Hello, this is Gareth for and on behalf of the iMoot team. It's my great pleasure to welcome today Becky Barrington to talk about putting the ooh into Moodle. Thank you, Rebecca.
Okay, hello everybody. I've got my camera on, but if it gets annoying, please just pop it in the chat box and I'll turn it off. But I'll mostly try and ignore it for me. So hello, welcome to everybody from all various parts of the world. I think Gold Star goes to Maureen at 4 o'clock in the morning, so well done. It's a dull 3 o'clock in the afternoon here in the UK. So my session is about putting the ooh into Moodle, and I'll explain why in a bit. I'm gonna hope to get your feedback as we go throughout. So if you can use the little chat box on the right hand side of your screen, I can keep an eye on that throughout, and I'll use your comments and things throughout the session. So just first of all, a little bit about me. My name's Rebecca Barrington. People mostly know me as Becky, and I'm currently the head of e-learning and innovation in Cornwall College, which is in the southwest of England, and it's a very large multi-campus college set across Devon and Cornwall with 8 main sites across the region. I've only been there for 3 months. I'm very new, and I was previously the Learning Technologies Manager at South Devon College, which is in South Devon, and I was there for 15 years. So I'm not new to technology and using a Moodle, just new to my particular current role. I've been using Moodle since 2005 in the two kind of core ways. One, to supplement traditional classroom delivery, and also in the last couple of years more fully online learning, and particularly collaboration online. If you have any questions throughout, please do pop them in the box, and I'm more than happy to answer them as it seems relevant. So why putting the ooh into Moodle? I was thinking about what I could do when I was asked to do a keynote, and my previous keynote was about putting the L into Moodle, and I put links there to the previous presentation if you haven't seen it or if you're interested, and I've also put the links on the Moodle course as well. But essentially I was looking at structuring learning in Moodle and particularly concentrating on the learning element of it. So I thought, well, what can I kind of look at for this next presentation? And as I moved to my new role over the last couple of months, and also reflecting on some of my previous experience, so there are some staff and students who haven't had positive experiences in Moodle, and sometimes when you mention Moodle to them, they go, oh, I hate Moodle, or whatever it might be, and I really should be ooh, and I really think that Moodle deserves that sort of kind of reaction, the positive reaction. So this session's all about why I think that the ooh isn't there and what we can do to bring that back. I think part of the reason I got the job I'm in was because of my passion and my knowledge of Moodle, so I need to make sure I use that to its full potential moving forward. So in this presentation, I want to highlight my experiences of why some people might go, oh, when Moodle's mentioned. Some just short, quick reasons why Moodle should be celebrated and people going, ooh, and the things that can make them go, ooh. And some of the things I've done so far to help to improve perceptions and what my future plans are as well. I would like your input throughout. So whenever you see this kind of white box down the bottom with some writing in, then you'll know that at the end of that slide, I'm going to be asking for your input. So when you see that, or at any point throughout the presentation, please do pop some information in the box, or I can turn on the audio, I think, if necessary. And I'd like your input. We're a big Moodle community, and that's one of the positive things about Moodle. So I'd rather do that throughout, but of course there will be time for questions and things at the end as well. So why do people say, I don't like Moodle? And these are some of the things I've come across when I've spoken to people about it. I think in a lot of cases, it could be a poor personal experience. They've either found it too hard. One of the campuses that in my new job had recently joined Cornwall College, and they were using Moodle 1.9. So I can kind of understand why they were saying it's not very easy. And now they know how to use Moodle 2 and lovely drag and drop, then actually it's not quite so hard anymore, and we're starting to get them more engaged. Or it could be that they've not seen anything positive. They're just in lists of stuff on there. And so they haven't really got any very good experience. And that's the reason why they don't really like it. In some cases, and this unfortunately is quite kind of common, they have heard other people say negative things. So they've heard someone else say, oh, I don't like Moodle because, or even I just don't like Moodle. And then they've used the same excuse. They've used the same reason rather than getting engaged. And I don't know how many of you have had a similar experience, but it often, I think, is as a result of time. People are too busy, and it's just another thing to learn. So it's easy just to say Moodle's not good enough, or I don't like it, rather than engage with it. That might not be entirely true, but in some cases that has been the reason that people have mentioned. I think in some cases, and again, I think this is quite common, they're too busy to find out the positives. So they may not like it very much, or they may be a little bit indifferent to Moodle, but they've not really got the time to figure out what really is great so that they can start to use it a bit more. And I think quite a big common one in further education in the UK at the moment, and it may be the same in other places, and it'd be great to find out actually if it is a perceived threat of a replacement of the teacher. I think that this is an area where increasingly with funding cuts, e-learning is often seen as a way of being able to reduce costs. And it can do that. But when technology, and Moodle in particular, is only used in that perspective, it all of a sudden has this very negative impact. And one of the key things is making sure that the teachers realise actually this is to supplement, to make their jobs easier and better than replacing them. But I think sometimes that perceived threat of, if I put all my stuff onto Moodle, they're going to get rid of me, is just too much of a risk for them to be able to get involved. And I think that is increasingly become a bit of a concern in their field in the UK. Also, I think there is another kind of side to this perspective as well, in that there are some very keen Moodle users who have perhaps reached the limit of what they feel is possible. It might be that they don't know to use, know what the potential is. They've never actually had anybody share what that potential is. It might be that they just don't know what other options there are. And in some cases, it can be that Moodle, expect Moodle to be more than it is. And the more and more we see online learning and the use of resources, the more people want better high-level things, and sometimes they're expecting Moodle to be something that it's just never going to be, and so therefore they think that Moodle's not good enough, and I think it's about managing that expectation. And again, I will come back to that in a little bit later on as well. There are students who are keen, but again, they might not be aware of a potential, and there's just a couple of examples to kind of put on the screen there of recent conversations I've had with some students in a focus group, and one student said, or a couple of students actually said, oh, it's just pointless, I can't find what I need, there's no point in using it. And that's just because it's been kind of presented poorly, it's just not in a format that's nice and easy to use. And another group of students said, well, I wish we knew all our assignments at the beginning of the year, and it cost me a fortune to print it off, I wish we could submit it electronically. And then when you say to the students, so actually we can do that now, and maybe we should talk to your students, they think, well, why aren't we? So I think sometimes the students can also have a poor experience and maybe don't engage because they haven't had a positive experience. So so just before I move on, what experiences of you had of perhaps a less than positive reaction to Moodle? I have got a couple on the screen I'll mention whilst other people are thinking. Gareth has mentioned that they associate it more with doing work, like homework, so use it as an excuse, and that's the teachers. And I think it is. I think sometimes teaching is hard work, and I think that extra bit is just too much. And unless you can already see the positives, then you may not engage. And I have another one here. Someone who used to hate, I think it's Maureen, used to hate Moodle till she realised what was possible after going to iMoot15, which is great, yay, convert. But I think it's quite common that actually you think it's not going to do anything. All it is just a place of dumping stuff, and unfortunately that is probably a lot of people's experience. Jeff White, scroll of death, just link after link of documents and videos. Yep, and if that's all you've seen, then that's all it's possible to do. So therefore it's a kind of negative impact, and Jeff agrees. And now we've got some others, so you can see all these. There's more coming through. I'll kind of put some bits and pieces and some real positive suggestions and alternatives to scroll of death and things there as well. One I like the most is the grid format, which I'll mention later. So so I think a lot of people have had these sort of experiences, and I want to make sure that we're looking at how we can turn it from that to a ooh. And these are my top things that I think are the best. I'm not going to go into these in a lot of detail because I'm assuming a lot of you know these things, but these are just my top and favourite and best things of Moodle that I think are quick wins to a certain effect to encourage staff to use it. So books and pages. I think someone just mentioned on the notice bit that someone used the book to prevent the scroll of death, and that was a very positive experience. The reason I like it is because it enables us to make things more mobile friendly. So instead of uploading, drag and dropping Word documents, PowerPoints, just dumping them all on the screen, turning them into books and pages is a nice and easy alternative, but it is so much more user friendly for people on using different formats to a standard PC or computer. I think the reason why people don't do it is because the content already exists in PowerPoint or Word. And I think the more we can encourage people to make content in Moodle, the more likely it is they're going to use the books and the pages. Activity completion is another quick win. I think it really helps to start to make things more personalized, so that people start to see Moodle more as a learning platform that can be customized than just a set of content on a page. And it's a nice way of converting the content on a page, literally into a list, to being something that is a little bit more interactive with just a couple of button presses without redesigning everything. Not probably always the best way, but it's a way of getting people kind of adapting. Lessons offers a bit of all the above, which I think is great. A lot of people don't use the lessons. I've started to use it much, much more. And I've got some examples later of where we have used lessons to get people a bit more engaged with Moodle. But it has the benefit of it being quite mobile friendly, interactive, and has the kind of activity completion elements to a certain extent that it personalizes the journey. Glossaries are absolutely 100% my favorite thing in Moodle. They're so easy to use. They're so much more than just a dictionary or a database of words. They for encyclopedias, the students can create them, make them a bit more interactive. And again, I've got an example of that a bit later on. But I think that's I've yet talked about a glossary where someone hasn't thought, oh yeah, I could use that. Forums, not just Q&A, and they don't stop using them from Q&A, they're still quite good for that. But actually, I think the forums can be a really good way of getting students involved, is just getting them collaborating, sharing the stuff they found, sharing the things they've made in a forum that's literally attaching an attachment to it or adding their content in it. Rather than it always being kind of a discussion, it can be for something different, and it can be a nice way of getting people involved. But of course, you've still got the news bits, you've got the Q&A bits, which are really useful. And then the other key thing I think that a lot of staff don't particularly know is that actually if you speak to someone who knows about Moodle, and there's usually someone I think in most organisations or people who are managing it themselves, is if it doesn't do what you want it to do right now, it might be able to. You know, there's that massive database of plugins, and actually we can probably fix this quite quickly. And it's that conversation, I think, which is really important to enable us to really adapt Moodle to make it meet people's needs so they can go, ooh, rather than I'm ignoring it, I'm not going to do anything with it. And also these different elements can be adaptable, so they can be used either in a blended context where it's supporting classroom delivery, or it can be used in complete distance learning kind of context. So first, another question, if you could share one thing to enthuse others about Moodle, what would it be? Take a sip of water. Checklist, yeah, me too, Maureen. I love the checklist. I'm going to mention it a bit later on. It's so simple and easy to use, but it just does it, which I think is great. Forum, sign up for activities. Yeah, using it with people. One topic format, most used course format. Oh, I don't think I've used that one. I used to do it. And grid, yes, as well. Yeah. Rubrics, yes, I agree, Sarah. I love the rubrics. And when I remember seeing that the very first time that it came out, and I was like, oh yes, this sounds fantastic. And another ditto for grid. So keep them coming, because obviously this chat box is a very useful way of everybody kind of collaborating and sharing ideas and things. Oh, I only got a smiley face too. Okay, so I'll move on to the next one. So how do we get excited by Moodle? And I'm just going to share some examples of some quick wins that I've had in my new job in the last couple of weeks, and the discussions that have led to solutions. So one example is where we did some training. We are using Moodle assignments for all of our HE staff, and also for some FE if we want, but for our higher education, university level students, they have to submit their work via Moodle, which is brilliant. Which means that they've all had to have training. So it's one of the very first things I did in my job was went off and did some assignment training. And we had a mix of staff, some very, very confident, very kind of confident users and heavy users of Moodle, and some, as you can imagine, quite reluctant, being forced to do something they don't want to do. And we're just sitting there kind of going through the motions. Now, as I was going through it, I was mentioning about activity completion as part of the assignment tool, and that kind of led to kind of further conversations about where that could be used and what other things could be done in Moodle, because this person was using Moodle, using it quite well, but largely for sharing resources rather than kind of anything interactive. So he said, oh, I need my students to view projects. They're honours degree projects. They have to do quite a heavy duty project. And then he needed them to read all about them. So he needed to know all the different projects that were available. And then they had to select one. And he wanted to see how Moodle could be done because his students were quite remote and they weren't always together. So I explained the book where you could have a chapter per one, but then also you have to flip through them all. I said choice could be used for selecting it. We could look at lessons for them to kind of go through a process to make a decision. But in the end, we decided to go with a glossary. And we set up a glossary with all the different project titles and descriptions in it. And the great thing about that was that we did talk about a database, but I'm not sure how many of you use databases, but they're a bit of a faff to set up. I personally find them a little bit too much time for me to do it. So that's why one of the reasons I love the glossary, to use it as a database. And so what we did is we had, within the project titles, there were key project staff that needed to be identified because there might be some students who only want to work with a certain teacher. And there are also certain kind of categories, whether it was this is from marine, and so it could be about marine animals, it could be about conservation and so on. So we used the categories feature in glossary to do that. And the great thing about the glossary is they could use it a bit like a book and flick through and read every single one, or they could just browse through the categories based on the topic or the teacher, or they can search for keywords and find the topic that they're particularly interested in. And we also use then, we set up a choice with all the titles on it so that they could actually choose to which project they wanted to do. And we did talk about setting up a limit, but in the end we decided not to set a limit of choices. They could choose whatever they wanted. But we did want to make sure that they'd read the glossary before they actually selected a project title. So they actually read the titles before they just chose one. So we set up activity completion, that the choice wasn't released until they'd actually read the project titles. And the teacher was, really, really happy with this. He's now, instead of just ignoring Moodle or just using it for what he knows, every time he wants something or he has an idea, he says, can Moodle do this? Can Moodle do that? Which is exactly the sort of conversation I want people to do. So I have someone going, ooh, about Moodle, which was, what I wanted to do. Another example is I had a teacher who was doing lots of delivering workshops, so actually doing some sessions with teachers, but he also works across all these different 8 or around to everybody is a real challenge. There's about a 200-mile distance between some of the campuses. So doing that is quite tough. So we wanted to put something online and to make sure it was interactive. And I did think about Exerti. And those of you who might know Exerti, I'm not sure, I think it might just be something in the UK. But it makes interactive learning content. And that would have been fine. It would have been great. But he said, well, what can we do in Moodle for it? So I started talking about lessons and the ability to customize it. We were using model answers. So they get the learning topic in the lesson, then they'd have to actually have a go at doing this case study scenario. It's all about target setting with students. Excuse me. And making sure that they were interacting and sharing information through through this tool. They were getting a model answer so that they could see how they were progressing. So he didn't have to go in and grade it. It was about the students knowing things for themselves. But also where he could go and see what they were saying so that he could start then to target the training that was needed. So if he was seeing common problems with the answers, he could actually address that. Excuse me a moment. So I've got the autumn term lurgy. And now he wants to do this himself. So he wants to learn a little bit more about them. But he's very keen to get going. Just looking at some of your comments here, yes, SCORM, Exerti mostly makes SCORM files, which is why I kind of tend to, they're great, I think, for just an interactive resource. But when you want to start to engage and track learning, I don't think Exerti and SCORMs are the right thing, because I think SCORM just doesn't ever really do what we want it to do, personally. Maybe it's just my skills. Lessons, don't be too scared of lessons, Jeff. I can kind of give you a bit of advice and things. Like I always, whenever I go through lessons, I get people doing it simple, because it can get really complicated. And so I get people to draw it first. So I actually say, well, if they're on this page, and they go to that page. And what I tend to start people to do to start with is actually just do a simple read a page, have a question. If they get the question right, they can move on. If they get the question wrong, they've got to read that page again. So that it goes in the loop if they're wrong, and it moves forward if they're right. And drawing on a piece of paper makes it a little bit easier to make it. And then once you get that concept, it becomes easier to make them a bit more complex. But personally, I do make them quite simple. And then I use the added features of other activities with activity completion in the course to really extend it even further, and using other tools. So that's makes it less complicated as a single resource. And then some other kind of examples I've had recently is using Moodle as a solution. So actually, rather than people having that kind of I just hate it, I don't like this, but this doesn't work for me, and turning that kind of sad face into a smiley face with some quite simple solutions, really. So when I think was my second day in the job, I happened to meet somebody in one of the campuses. They said it's just so hard for students to find their courses. The students should, once they log in, they should go straight to their course and then that's it. Which I kind of agree with, but unfortunately, not unfortunately, I don't agree with it being just into one course. In the UK, and I'm assuming it's probably the same everywhere, students will go and do a particular qualification because they're interested in it, animal management, equine, A-levels or whatever it might be. Now that's part of their qualification, and that would be the course that this teacher is wanting them to go in and see the second they log into Moodle. But there's so much more that the students need access to. There are additional support resources, there are courses that are going to really support them with their English and their maths, which is a really key part of their core program. So if we did say as soon as you log in you go straight to your subject, then there's a whole load of resources that are not available. But I did agree that actually it's very, very hard for the students to find their courses, and I'll show you why it was so hard in a moment. And all I did it straight away, is I turned on the dashboard. Simple as that. Turned on the dashboard instead of having the kind of main site homepage, and I did kind of amend the layout a little bit just to pretty it up, well not pretty it up, just tidy it up, and instantly that was fixed. Now the key thing here is that someone mentioned it and we were able to address it, and I think that's often why people think bad things about Moodle is if it's just broken, I'm just going to ignore it, or it's not right, I'm just going to ignore it. So what we did, this here, which is much prettier, was our original dashboard or homepage for the students. Now in my organisation we have departments, and they are subject-based departments. The problem is a student doesn't care, just does not care that if they're doing sport and that happens to be in the health kind of section, they don't care that there's an academic studies one or a technology one. They just care about the sport bit. So what they had to do to find their course, they could click on my course on the left-hand side, but I don't know about you, but I don't hardly see anybody ever using that navigation menu. So they'd have to click on the sub thing, and then they'd have to find sport, they have to find their course, and it was just a real faff to try and find it. So we've still got this on the main course, but now when they've logged in, it's their personalised dashboard, and it tells them how to customise it. Now we know as an organisation we need to do more with our theme. It's a theme that they've been using for a very, very long time, and now that I'm here spending time on Moodle, that's one of our first jobs to be looking at, ready for next academic year. I don't like changing it in the academic year, but we will be doing a lot of work on the themes of things. But that just meant that I got more people engaged in Moodle within one kind of job, which was, a real positive for me. Another one was about the course layout. So a lot of people saw that lovely, pretty kind of icon on the top, and they wanted their course to look like that. Now this one has been done, as I'm sure lots of you have done, by using a table and adding the images and hyperlinking to the specific courses. And that's very, very time consuming. But I knew about the grid format, and a few of you have kind of talked about the grid format. And so I just got the grid format installed, and instantly the lovely new format. Now this is a very simple one. This teacher wanted just literally the week numbers, but obviously put lots of different pictures and things in it. We purchased a website giving us free kind of images that we can edit and amend and adapt so that it can suit our needs. And it really means that then we can make it a little bit more kind of web based, and it does work much better, particularly on kind of mobile devices and things. And it's just, again, been a pretty instant hit with people. When they see it, they want it converted across. But you needed a few to get started for people to see that. So again, some people have been won over because no longer have they got the scroll of death. They've got it looking pretty like a website, and now they're kind of more interested in spending time on the Moodle. A couple of other things that I've added in as a result. Actually, these have been preempting discussions, and they did preempt discussions. The attendance register, which is basically calculating, and there are a few options of it on the plugins database, basically captures the amount of time someone spends online. Those of you who perhaps have looked at the reports, you can see what people have been doing online, but you'd have to manually calculate that person's been online for 6 hours on this day. And that's essentially what the attendance register does for you. And also the checklist, because the monitor particularly if you use activity completion, you can actually monitor other bits and pieces to say that what they've actually managed to achieve. Now, the reason I had these installed is because I'd used them in my old organisation, and I knew that e-learning was an area that they want to develop, or we want to develop in my new job, and it's the reason why I'm there and got my job. So I had these installed at the same time as the grid format. When I asked for one thing, I thought I will ask for the other things I know I want. And within, I think, a week, it came up in conversation, well, if we do this online learning, how are we going to know what people are up to? I said, well, I've installed the attendance register and the checklist, and that will do it for you. So preempting the things that you know people are going to like. And I think that comes from experience, particularly, I suppose, in my case. But they, again, I've got people willing to consider how Moodle can be used, because all of a sudden it's going to meet their needs. Whereas the same conversation may have happened 6 months ago and the answers weren't there, and so Moodle was just ignored. So I think conversations are really, really important to go to kind of really get that into Moodle. Now, all of those discussions are based on, all those examples are based on discussions, quite often ad hoc in discussions as opposed to planned discussions. And the problem, if you know the right person, then you can get a solution, and that's brilliant. And it is helping with these staff that's giving us these opportunities. But in an organisation of my size, I could never go around and have those conversations with everybody. There are thousands of staff who work there, and thousands of students who are there. And I could never actually achieve that. So I need to find, this should continue where I can. We should still have these conversations, and I need to make sure I've got people on all my different sites to make sure those conversations can happen. But one of the problems with this is that it works for the really passionate. So those people that really love Moodle are going to ask and talk about it a bit more and ask for solutions. And actually, similarly, all those people who really, really hate Moodle will soon tell you that they hate Moodle. So you've got a conversation there, and you can start to turn it around. However, they're two kind of quite big ends of the spectrum, and you've got this massive group of people in the middle who perhaps are not going to ever have that conversation, and you'll never be able to win them over. And so I'm just going to share now some of the things that I think we can do to get those people kind of engaged in Moodle a bit more. Before I do that, I just noticed we've got I've got at least one question here. So what does the attendance register give similar, does it give similar information to reports? It doesn't actually. It's the reports, unless someone knows a report, I don't. There are lots of great reports. There's a report that you can look up a student and see what they've been doing online. You can't, and that is great when you want to go into that level of detail, but sometimes you just want evidence that they've been online, and to capture that for each person would take quite a long time. So if you've got to provide a report for perhaps proof of funding that they've actually been engaging online. So what the attendance register does is it will give you a list of students, and for each student that they've spent 3 hours and 15 minutes on this online course, and their last assessment to this date. And also you can turn on a bit that says about offline activity. So where students might be doing work kind of outside of Moodle, they can actually go in and say, yes, I've also spent another 3 hours on this piece of work, so they can capture it. So it's just one big report. As far as student engagement is concerned, it's not going to change how they're engaging. All it's doing is capturing what they're engaging. On the other hand, they can see it, so it might be that it encourages them to spend more time on Moodle, but which they can't see that level of detail, certainly not very easily when they're looking at it from the point of view of how much time they spent online. Okay, any other questions at this point? Okie dokie. So some of the ways that I'm hoping to get more people involved in Moodle is showcasing examples and modelling. So in the case of showcasing examples, where we've got some people using the grid format now, when other people see it, that kind of cascades. So the more and more we can show off examples of good Moodle courses, the more I think that will help to cascade. But I think one of the ways we can do that is by modelling, and particularly for things which are whole organisation activities that all classes will use. And in the case that we're looking at developing now, is we have something called a study programme in the UK, which is essentially the English, maths, their main programme, employability skills, digital literacy, and that kind of thing. And that's a very big part of their overall programme. And so we need to make sure we're providing support for all those different areas. And so we have something called the USP, the universal, specific and personal kind of elements of their program. And so we are setting up a kind of a kiosk, if you like, which is Moodle based, that will allow the students to jump into a particular section. And we're just going to use that for modelling some activities that you can do in Moodle. It won't be a good example of e-learning because it's not that kind of course. But instead of just making websites all the time, we're showing how Moodle can be used in a positive way, just providing information. But within that, there'll be a jump off to e-learning activities as well. We're hoping to model bits and pieces for development. Something that I'm particularly aware of now, something that we're starting to do, is actually not only sticking to Moodle. Moodle as a platform, brilliant. Keep it. It's got that structure. It's got so much control now with all the activity completion and course completion and conditional activities. But actually, the content isn't always that good. You know, a book and a page is great if you just want a bit of content, but if you want some interactivity or want it presented in a different way, then actually Moodle doesn't really do that very well. So that's why I think people upload PowerPoints and different bits and pieces. So I encourage people to use external tools that they can embed. And these are just a couple of ones that we use quite heavily. eMaze, I'm not sure how many people use eMaze, free, love free. What it does is it essentially makes it a bit like a PowerPoint presentation, but it's web-based. So you embed that into a lesson, into the main page, into Moodle, and it means that it will work then on any device rather than it being a PowerPoint, which may not. And also because it's web-based, it adapts, so it changes its size depending on the screen that it's on, which makes it much more user-friendly. And also videos as well. Video, you know, we all know we can put in YouTube and that kind of thing now, but also we make quite a lot of animations to kind of explain through a topic. And again, they embed really nicely. So as an example, this is an example actually from South Devon College. So thank you, South Devon, for this. But we have, you know, maths is a big thing, and students quite often have problems with understanding the maths problem. So this is an example of a lesson, actually, for those people who are interested in lessons. So what we've got is it's just a standard content page, lesson content page, and the two-way tables. The idea here is it's actually an embedded animation, embedded video. And this video talks through the maths question, exactly the same words as it has on the exam paper, actually animates it so it feels more like a real problem example. The students watch that video that's just embedded into the page on the lesson, and then they go next. The next page talks them through how they would actually do the maths for that problem, so it's taught them how to do it. And then they get to a question page, which actually gives them a similar but different problem, where they actually have a go at doing it themselves, and then they get feedback, and then it goes through the lesson of what they need to achieve to get it right, so the common problems that they would have got wrong. Now, this is a way of using a lesson to really provide a personalized kind of learning experience for the students, but not relying only on the lesson, so actually embedding some content. And it can help the look and feel to be much more, the experience people might have seen online in much more high quality, much more expensive provision that they might have seen online, and but without it being expensive provision. And my other kind of top tips, my top tips, and other things I'm about to do to really push Moodle a bit more in my new organisation is an advent calendar. The advent calendar is going to be a grid format with date released content, so they can't get to the 5th of December until the 5th of December. So that will be showcasing at least 2 functions of Moodle. And the idea will be that when they go into that day of the week and join the advent countdown in December, they'll learn a little bit more about what Moodle can do. So we'll be sharing kind of some of the top things that Moodle can do, showing examples, things like lessons and grid format, and all the top things I think are nice, easy fixes for using Moodle, and also the support that's available to them. So really help people to get involved. Something I did in my old organisation, we had something called Top Tech Tips, where they signed up to an email subscription service, just normal email. And each week we sent out a new top tip for using technology. It could be a new piece of software, a kind of a keyboard shortcut that a lot of people found useful, just to get people drip feeding information. And my idea is that once in the advent calendar, we're going to make it guest access so anybody can see it, but actually encourage them to enroll, and all of a sudden I've got to sign up then, and then I'll use that course to continue to drip feed with forums and things, the email information for new ideas of using technology generally. And another event that I'm going to be hopefully doing is something called the Moodle Way. I did it in my old organisation, and I got a video, kind of the marketing material that I actually used to promote it to my staff in my old organisation is available on YouTube there. So, you know, feel free, this presentation's online, so feel free to watch it if you want to. But essentially it's based on the Martini kind of idea. So instead of the Martini way, it's the Moodle way. The idea is about learning anytime, anywhere, any place, and that's what we were promoting. It was a very physical journey, so you actually had to physically go through actual real kind of real life versions of virtual activity. But the one thing I just want to mention here was an activity that we did that by far has been one of the best things I've ever done with staff with Moodle. And it was a book activity. So essentially what we had was 2 people and 2 tables of books. Those tables of books were exactly the same books on each table. One of them was organised, alphabetical, as you'd expect to see books, and the other one was just literally just dumped on the table. And there was the task was there was a particular book on these 2 tables, exactly the same book with a piece of paper inside it. And they had to go at the same time, and the 2 people had to go and find this resource. And without fail, as you'd expect, the person in the organised table found it much, much quicker than the other person. Then we got them to look at a Moodle course that was essentially the same. Load of organised resources, not necessarily alphabetical, but organised by topic. And another one that was just dumped online. And the amount of people that all of a sudden realised the importance of organising information online was shocking, actually. You'd think people would think about it, but they didn't. And it was quite a revelation for us in our old organisation. People all of a sudden started to want to fix things. So it's something that, you know, I will definitely want to be doing in my new place. So at this point, I'll just pause because I'm about to run out of time. I've nearly finished. But what promotional activities do you do in your own organisations, and also any general questions? And whilst people are writing and thinking, have got some questions which I'll answer. Balance of A levels to BTECs. In my old organisation, actually in both, much more heavily BTEC to A level, Marcus. The A levels are still very, very important, but not as we just don't have the breadth in the same way. So yeah, a lot of BTECs in both of my organisations. No, I haven't used PWIC at all, she says. I do get reports, and I used to use Google Analytics, and actually it might be PWIC now. Essentially, it's just telling us how much on the whole site, rather than anything else. And I've never used Gizmo or even heard of it, Marcus, so I don't know, I'm afraid. Jeff, quiz activity, running a lesson. You don't need to, because actually it's got quiz functions in it. Limited, it's got multiple choice, essay questions, matching and true and false, I think. So you can actually, they are a question page that you actually have a question at the end. You could, in theory, link the lesson to a quiz and vice versa through the activity completion stuff, but you probably don't necessarily need to do that. Grading BTECs in Moodle, Marcus. We use the BTEC grading plugin. We did look at I can't remember what it's called, the grade tracker, I think it's from Bedford, which is brilliant, but it was just a bit too complicated for us. But the BTEC marking plugin really, really works. I don't think we use it at Cornwall yet, but we used it very, very heavily at South Devon. And it's, yeah, it really, really works. What worked for us, and it will work again, I hope. That's it for the questions. Oh, cool. Oh, thank you, Marcus. Well, yay, keep it up, because I can't live without it. I know South Devon can't, definitely. Any other questions or any other kind of sharing good practice that anybody would like? Within my last minute, look at that for timing.
Hello, Gareth and the IMoot team. We've still got a few more minutes for people to ask questions. Certainly, thank you very much, Becky. Really informative, different, lots of lot of thoughts and ideas going on there to think. Thank you very much for your time. I know how much effort needs to go involved in making presentations and presenting. So once again, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everybody. I hope it was useful. And I'm on Twitter and I'm online, so if anyone's got any other questions or conversations, then just get in touch. Jeff, no, I haven't posted a link to a well-designed course because everything's kind of really locked down. So I'll try and get some kind of screenshots and bits and pieces. I think it's something that anyone would like, actually. So any sharing of good practice in that area, I think, would be useful. That's probably it. Has anybody else left? Yeah, me too, Marcus. Enjoy your weekend.